everyone. I'd like to talk about my experience of learning English as a non-English speaking uh, person. Well, if I want to say how long I've learned English, if I take it seriously, I would say that I only take it seriously for maybe like uh, about 10 years I can say. But from the early stage of my childhood, I I'm like many people in Taiwan. We are often required to take English lessons from primary school up until college. Of course, some people don't really enroll in college, but basically, we start to learn English either from kindergarten or from primary school. And yeah, but in Taiwan, if you're not enrolled in an international school like American school, you rarely have the opportunity to speak English, even though you've been educated in in English lesson. The issue with this is you only have a few hours of English lesson each week, and this is not enough. Also, parents don't really um, don't really have the awareness of letting their children to speak right and use English in their day-to-day life. As you know that if you want to really master a foreign language, you really need to actively learn and use it. Otherwise, at the end of the day, it's really hard for a learner to really master and manipulate the language they required. Also, when they don't really use it for a long time, they may lose the skill. So these days, I've been trying to improve my reading skill. I graduated from medical school, so I frequently read medical documents in English. So anything related to medicine is not a problem for me. However, outside of medicine, I typically have a struggle. I often struggle with reading articles related to finance, or even reading a bit advanced novel, something like this. And so these days, I've tried to read widely to mimic how native English speakers learn their own language. And what I've been doing these days is to print out many documents and newspapers from like the BBC and the Guardians, and even from the BNJ, which is an association from the UK. And I decided to print them out is because I found that for me, I prefer to read physical documents, which allows me to build better foundation and reading comprehension. I've no idea whether it happens to people who use digital devices from their very young age and do it frequently. As for me, I don't really use like phones and computers that often when I was young. So since the COVID pandemic, I had to force myself to adjust the new trend of using laptop and smartphones. But now here I am. I started to come back a little bit to print my documents out, and I found that it's really easy for me to to mark some words and phrases that I don't know and highlight important words that is really crucial in an article. Also, I think using a combination of both physical and digital documents can definitely boost the efficiency of reading an article. I'm not saying that reading a physical book is much better than digital document. I think the better approach is to use a combination, because when we have a smartphone or a laptop, we can simply search and check the definition of each phrases or idiom with one at our fingertip. However, if we only focusing on relying on physical documents, and when we go and flip a dictionary, a physical dictionary, it really can take up ages to look up a word. We don't want to go back to the Stonehenge period and just spending ages to look up a few phrases. Instead, we now have digital devices to speed up all the process. And speaking of magazine and online platforms, I found there's a very interesting things, and it's that all the platforms nowadays are using algorithms to tailor everyone's preferences. So when we are scrolling on social media and looking for news, those platforms often present us the most relevant information that we may like to read. And if we don't really step out our comfort zone and read other information or articles outside of our preferences, it can really narrow our mindset and perspective. And that's why maybe people often struggle to get the hand of other people's perspective. When we understand each side of opinion in one issue, we can weigh up the pros and cons and evaluate the situation with our own judgment. And that's why I still believe that reading physical magazines is better than simply reading documents and news on the platforms. When you are reading a magazine or a physical newspaper, you don't have the mean to mimic algorithms, because the things that the paper you're holding have contained all the information in that day or in that week. And when you're flipping the pages, you can sometimes scan something that may trigger your interest, and over time you may found that you actually quite interesting about a particular issue that you didn't know about. And when you are reading something outside of your comfort zone and outside of your knowledge, you can actually expand your perspective and your horizons, and share your opinion, and even build wider and also even make friends with wider social perspective. Yeah, so this is how I learned to read in English. When I am reading English, I prefer to use the very natural way, in a way how native speakers use, like pretending yourself as English speakers. And you can also, and this is also how I myself read my own language. And similarly, I believe that you also experience similar situations. So imagine that the language now you're speaking, which is your native language, is another language that you want to learn. Just think in that perspective. Then you can slowly understand that you actually can build up your vocabulary and understand some subtleties in another country, that eventually you will be able to read fluently in the language that you want to learn. And it's also important to remember and keep in mind that learning another language takes time. No matter how good you think your language is, at some point you may find there are some phrases, some verbs that you really don't know. And when you guess it, you may guess it in the wrong way. And then sometimes it can really rub my shoulders wrong. But don't worry, eventually, if you keep improving your language skills, you will be able to match to the level of the native speakers. Thank you for watching. Bye.